March 2007, Auckland, New Zealand, the SkyCity Casino sits at the heart of downtown Auckland, like a city within a city. It never closes. The lights never dim. Tourists wander through the slot machines on the ground floor. Upstairs, behind unmarked doors, serious players sit at private tables where the minimum bet can be thousands of dollars a hand. The casino draws in hundreds of millions of dollars every year. It employs thousands of people. It is one of the most recognizable buildings in New Zealand, and for over a decade, it was also one of the most useful tools in a large-scale money laundering operation. On one of those private tables, on a night in early 2007, a man the staff had come to know simply as the big player had been sitting for over 12 hours. His name was William Yan. Some knew him as Bill Liu. Others knew him as Yang Ming Yan. He had a different name for every version of himself. On this night, chips worth hundreds of thousands of dollars moved across the table in front of him as if they were nothing. He ordered no food. He barely looked up. He just played. This is the story of how one man turned a casino into a machine. How he moved an estimated $293 million through Auckland's most famous gambling floor over more than a decade. And how, when investigators finally caught up with him, the case would become one of the most complex, controversial, and quietly unsatisfying legal outcomes in New Zealand history. William Yan was born in China. By the time he arrived in New Zealand in the early 2000s, he had already built a life that was difficult to trace. He was a businessman, he had connections, and he had money, a great deal of it, that moved in ways that did not always have clear explanations. He settled into Auckland's Chinese community. He bought property across the city. He drove luxury cars. He attended functions, made donations, and built a reputation as a generous and well-connected figure. On the surface, he looked like a successful immigrant entrepreneur making the most of a new country, but people who paid close attention noticed something off. The money seemed to move faster than any legitimate business could explain. The volume was wrong, the speed was wrong, and the source was always just out of focus. At SkyCity, Yan quickly earned the title that casinos give to their most valuable customers, high roller. He was given access to private rooms, personal hosts, and the kind of treatment that makes a person feel invisible to the rules that apply to everyone else. Between 2001 and 2013, he would visit the casino hundreds of times. He would gamble for stretches of 15 hours at a time. He played baccarat and blackjack, the games with the highest table limits and the fastest turnover of cash. In one sitting in 2006, he lost $5 million in 82 minutes, not over a night. Not over several visits, 82 minutes. Staff later described watching it happen as surreal, like seeing someone set a car on fire in the parking lot and just walk away. What struck people was not the loss itself. It was that he did not seem to care. He ordered a drink, adjusted his chips, and kept playing. Here is what police would later allege was actually happening inside those 15-hour sessions. Yan was not simply gambling. He was washing money. The process worked something like this. Large amounts of cash, money that had come from illegal sources in China, connected to drug distribution networks and fraud, would arrive in New Zealand. That money needed to look clean. It needed a story. And casinos, with their massive volumes of cash moving in and out every hour. You bring in dirty money as casino chips. You play. You win some, you lose some, and what comes out the other end looks like gambling winnings, money that any accountant can point to with a straight face. The casino records show a transaction. The money has a history now. It has passed through a regulated, supervised institution. On paper, it is clean, and paper is all that most financial systems ever ask to see. But Yan's operation went further than the tables. In one incident that would later become central to the police case, $500,000 in cash and chips was withdrawn from the casino and handed directly to a real estate agent who was standing inside the building. The money was used to buy an apartment. No bank transfer, no paper trail through a legitimate financial institution, just cash in an envelope. changing hands in a casino corridor, and a property title that looked perfectly legal by the time the ink dried. SkyCity had banned Yan twice over the years. Both times he came back. Both times the casino let him. Because whatever he was doing at those tables, he was doing it at enormous volume. For a casino, a customer gambling $293 million over 12 years is not a problem. He is a revenue stream. The failures in SkyCity's anti-money laundering systems were not subtle. There were rules in place, requirements to report large cash transactions, to verify sources of funds, to flag suspicious behavior. Yan's behavior was, by almost any measure, suspicious. But the checks that should have caught him were not working as they should, and no one pushed hard enough to find out why. By 2012, William Yan was already known to New Zealand police. He had been charged with immigration fraud, accused of providing false documents when applying for residency. The case went to trial. The judge described the evidence against him as, in her own words, highly suspicious. And then she acquitted him. The standard of proof had not been met. It was, by legal standards, the correct outcome. But it left investigators watching a man they believed was running a significant criminal operation walk out of a courtroom into the Auckland sunshine. It was a bitter outcome, but it was not the end. In 2014, police launched Operation Galaxy. The investigation focused on money laundering connected to drug distribution groups operating across New Zealand. Yan's name kept appearing. Investigators spent months building a picture of where the money had gone, the properties, the companies, the assets. The scale of what they found was striking. Nearly $300 million had moved through the casino alone. Properties had been bought with cash. Assets had been spread across multiple sectors in ways designed to make the full picture hard to see. Then came the political dimension. In 2008, Associate Immigration Minister Shane Jones had personally approved New Zealand citizenship for Yan. This was against official advice. The officials who reviewed Yan's application had serious ones. Jones overruled them. His stated reason was that Yan faced the possibility of execution or organ harvesting if returned to China. When this came to light, it became a political controversy that ran for years. Jones maintained he had made the right call on humanitarian grounds. Critics argued that the decision had allowed a man who would later be convicted of money laundering to obtain citizenship in a country he had no genuine ties to. The debate over how citizenship decisions are made and who gets to override expert advice has never been fully resolved. Through all of it, Yan remained in Auckland. He lived in a penthouse apartment, he kept doing business, and he waited. The resolution of the William Yan case did not come through a dramatic trial. It came through a deal. In 2016, Yan agreed to forfeit $42.85 million in assets, luxury cars, real estate across Auckland, a significant stake in the technology company Mega, which had been co-founded by the notorious internet entrepreneur Kim.com. It was, at that point, one of the largest criminal asset forfeitures in New Zealand history. The list of what was seized read like the inventory of a very particular kind of success, the kind built quietly, behind other people's names, across a decade of nights at a baccarat table. The money was divided between countries. New Zealand kept $15 million. Approximately $28 million was sent to China under an international asset sharing arrangement. Because the original crimes, the source of the dirty money, had occurred in China, Chinese authorities had a legal claim to a portion of what was recovered. It was a deal between two governments, and Yan was the asset they were dividing. Also in 2016, as part of what prosecutors described as a grand deal, Yan voluntarily traveled to China to face charges there. Under China's Operation Skynet, a campaign targeting corruption and financial crime, linked to officials and business people who had moved money abroad, he was prosecuted for fraud. He received a 3-year suspended sentence. He served no prison time in China. He returned to New Zealand. In 2017, he pleaded guilty to a single representative charge of money laundering in a New Zealand court. The charge was representative, meaning it stood in for a much larger and more complex picture of conduct that prosecutors had decided not to pursue in full. He was sentenced to 5 months of home detention to be served in his Auckland penthouse. He was permitted to leave for work. For laundering an estimated $293 million, William Yan spent no time in a prison cell. SkyCity was not charged. The casino did face regulatory scrutiny in the years following the case, and anti-money laundering laws in New Zealand were subsequently tightened. But no criminal charges were ever brought against the institution that had processed the bulk of the money. The casino that had banned Yan twice and let him back both times, the casino that had watched $293 million pass through its tables over 12 years without triggering the kind of sustained intervention that might have stopped it sooner, faced no criminal accountability for its role in what happened. His New Zealand citizenship was reviewed by the Department of Internal Affairs after his conviction. Following that review, he was permitted to keep it. As of 2023, reports suggest Yan is living in Hong Kong free. There is a version of this story that is about one man's extraordinary audacity, the 15-hour sessions, the $5 million lost in 82 minutes, the aliases, the cash was handed to real estate agents inside a casino. It is a remarkable story on those terms alone. But the deeper story is about systems. SkyCity had rules designed to prevent exactly what Yan was doing, and those rules did not work. Immigration officials gave advice that was overruled by a politician. A prosecution for immigration fraud produced an acquittal, despite a judge calling the evidence highly suspicious. A guilty plea to money laundering resulted in home detention. At every point where the system was supposed to catch him, it found a reason to let him pass. The $42.85 million forfeiture sounds significant, and in raw numbers it is, but it represents roughly 14 cents recovered for every dollar that police believe was laundered. The rest, nearly $250 million, has never been fully traced or recovered. It is somewhere in the world, cleaned and spent, living new lives as real estate or investments, or ordinary-looking bank balances. SkyCity itself faced scrutiny in the years that followed. Regulators looked harder at how the casino had handled its anti-money laundering obligations. Questions were asked in Parliament. Reports were written. Whether that scrutiny ever translated into meaningful change is a question the casino's own history continues to raise. The casino that processed most of Yan's money is still open. It never closes. The lights never dim. And somewhere in the city tonight, someone is sitting at a baccarat table, and the chips are moving, and no one is entirely sure where the money came from. That, in the end, may be the most unsettling thing about the case of William Yan. Not what he did, but how easy it was.